World War II was not only a clash of armies, it was a clash of leaders. Behind the front lines, powerful officials directed strategy, industry, intelligence, and ideology. On one side stood the high command of Nazi Germany, on the other, the civilian and military leadership of the United States. Though they held comparable positions, the systems they served and the legacies they left could hardly have been more different. In this video, we pair 10 of the most powerful Nazi officials with their American counterparts, comparing their roles, their reach, and how history remembers them.
At the very top were the heads of state. Adolf Hitler was Führer and Reich Chancellor, holding supreme authority over Germany's government, military, and Nazi party. He alone decided war and peace. His American counterpart was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Roosevelt led a democracy constrained by Congress and elections, while Hitler ruled a dictatorship answerable to no one. Both led their nations through the entire war, yet only one survived to see its end. Roosevelt died in April 1945. Hitler took his own life days later as Berlin fell.
Internal security was the domain of Heinrich Himmler. As Reichsführer of the SS and chief of German police, he controlled the Gestapo, the concentration camp system, and the racial terror at the heart of the Nazi state, making him a chief architect of the Holocaust. The American parallel is J. Edgar Hoover, director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who ran domestic counterintelligence and built vast files on millions of citizens. Both men headed powerful security apparatuses, but where Hoover operated within the bounds of American law, Himmler served a regime that made terror official policy.
The skies were commanded by Hermann Göring and Henry Hap Arnold. Göring, a flamboyant First World War ace, led the Luftwaffe as Reichsmarschall, the second most powerful figure in the Reich. He promised Hitler that the Air Force could win the war, then watched it crumble. Arnold commanded the United States Army Air Forces and oversaw its growth into the mightiest air arm in history, bombing Germany and Japan into submission. Both built enormous air forces, but Arnold's strategic vision helped found what would become the independent U.S. Air Force, while Göring's boasts ended in disgrace and a suicide pill.
Information was a weapon, wielded by Joseph Goebbels and Elmer Davis. Goebbels, Reich Minister of Propaganda, controlled Germany's press, film, radio, and culture, spreading anti-Semitism and fanatical loyalty to the very end. His American counterpart, Elmer Davis, a veteran journalist, directed the Office of War Information, guiding American media and countering enemy propaganda. Both shaped what their citizens believed, but Davis worked to inform a free press in a democracy, while Goebbels built a machinery of lies in service of a criminal regime. Goebbels died with Hitler in the bunker. Davis returned to journalism.
Diplomacy fell to Joachim von Ribbentrop and Cordell Hull. As Reich foreign minister, Ribbentrop negotiated the pact with the Soviet Union that enabled the invasion of Poland, then led Germany's disastrous foreign relations. Hull, America's longest-serving Secretary of State, shaped the Lend-Lease program that armed the Allies and laid the groundwork for the United Nations. Both managed their nation's wartime diplomacy, but their legacies diverged sharply. Ribbentrop became the first to be hanged at Nuremberg for waging aggressive war. Hull received the Nobel Peace Prize for his work toward a post-war order of cooperation.
The War of Factories was run by Albert Speer and Donald Nelson. Speer, Reich Minister of Armaments and War Production, dramatically boosted German weapons output even as Allied bombs rained down, exploiting slave labor from the camps. Nelson chaired the War Production Board, converting America's peacetime economy into the arsenal of democracy that armed the free world. Both were the production czars of their nations. Speer's brilliance prolonged a lost war and rested on atrocity. He was convicted at Nuremberg. Nelson's achievement helped win it, and American industry never looked back.
At sea, Karl Dönitz and Ernest King commanded rival navies.
Dönitz, Grand Admiral of the Kriegsmarine, built the U-boat wolf packs that nearly starved Britain into submission in the Battle of the Atlantic. King, as Commander-in-Chief of the United States Fleet and Chief of Naval Operations, directed the vast American armada that fought across two oceans. Both were fierce, autocratic leaders devoted to the sea. Dönitz succeeded Hitler briefly before surrendering, then faced trial at Nuremberg. King helped forge the greatest navy in history and the global reach that came with it.
Top military command fell to Wilhelm Keitel and George C. Marshall. Keitel headed the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, the high command of Germany's armed forces, loyally signing orders that included war crimes on the Eastern Front. Marshall, as Chief of Staff of the United States Army, organized, expanded, and led the largest American military effort in history, later shaping the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe. Both were the senior soldiers of their nations. Keitel was executed at Nuremberg for his signatures on criminal orders. Marshall became Times Man of the Year and won a Nobel Peace Prize.
The most famous field commanders were Erwin Rommel and George S. Patton. Rommel, the Desert Fox, won spectacular victories in North Africa with bold armored thrusts, becoming a legend on both sides. Patton, America's most aggressive general, led the Third Army in its lightning dash across France and relieved Bastogne in the Battle of the Bulge. Both were daring, media-celebrated masters of mobile warfare who led from the front. Rommel, implicated in the plot to kill Hitler, was forced to take his own life. Patton died in a car crash in occupied Germany just months after victory.
Intelligence and covert action belonged to Reinhard Heydrich and William Wild Bill Donovan. Heydrich led the Reich Security Main Office, the SD, and the Gestapo, chairing the conference that organized the Holocaust before being assassinated in Prague. Donovan, a decorated war hero, founded the Office of Strategic Services, America's first national intelligence agency and the forerunner of the CIA. Both were the spy masters of their nations. Heydrich was known as the architect of terror, cold and ruthless. Donovan built an American tradition of intelligence shaped by democratic oversight and a very different purpose.
These pairings reveal a stark truth about the Second World War. Nazi Germany and the United States built parallel structures of power, leaders with comparable titles commanding armies, factories, fleets, and secrets. But titles only tell half the story. The American officials served, however imperfectly, within a constitutional order and a tradition of law. Their Nazi counterparts served a regime built on aggression, racism, and mass murder. In the end, that difference, not the similarity of their positions, is what history remembers most.